Hello, and welcome back to Say Yes to Chocolate podcast. I'm Dr. Becky. This is Sarah B. And on this podcast, we help you age strong, age well. We help you with energy, staying strong, confident, independent as you get older.
Yeah, and today we are talking about something.
One of the most important parts of aging strong.
Yes.
And that is bone health.
So we're going to be talking about something today that I know for a fact because I've had this conversation probably 105,000 times.
Yep.
In our wellness center is something that's so confusing to almost anybody who's had some form of bone scan done.
Yes.
And that is a T-score. What does it mean? What is it?
Right.
And what does it actually mean to me?
Right. How do you conceptualize that, right?
Yeah.
So your T-score, Sarah, is the score that most people get after they've had a DEXA scan or a bone scan. But the DEXA scan is the X-ray technology that's used. You get your report back and you're typically given a T-score in 3 to 5 different areas of the body. But most women get this number and they're either told you're fine, or you might be told that you have osteopenia or osteoporosis. And that's kind of it.
We see this a lot, is that people come in, they have these words, they have this T-score, and they're like, what does this mean? Because they are given no explanation, right. And they don't really know how to feel or how to process that. They're either like vibing and great, or there's potential panic.
Yeah, for sure. So today we're going to be breaking this down in a way that actually makes sense so you can interpret what that means and get some clarity, because clarity can lead to action, which is the whole point.
So Dr. Becky, let's just start simple.
Okay, yeah. So a T-score, all it is, literally, Sarah, is a comparison. It is a comparison of your bone density at whatever age you are when you get your DEXA scan to a healthy 30-year-old.
I think that's a big surprise to most people. And it also feels a little aggressive that you're comparing, like we talk to people who are 75. Why are you comparing me to a 30-year-old?
Right. So here's the reason. Because every human body around the age of 30, you reach peak bone mass is what we call it. So for the first approximately 30 years of our life, we're in growth mode. And so everything is growing, everything's getting stronger, our skin, our hair, our nails, our muscles, our bones, everything is. And about the age of 30, we reach peak bone mass and typically peak muscle mass. So the question is, how does your bone density at the age you're at now when the scan is done compare to a healthy 30-year-old? And it allows us to analyze if we're in bone growth, bone maintenance, or bone loss. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. So let's actually decode what those numbers mean, because I think for a lot of people, this is where they start spiraling and like really have some confusion.
And don't really
they don't really understand.
Yep.
So
we are going to break this down unscientifically, but scientifically, if that makes sense. So it's the easiest way that I have come up with to have people be able to conceptualize what's going on in their bones when we're talking about a T-score. And it's relatively accurate. So take it for what it's worth. It's for you to be able to understand. So simplified version. When you get a T-score, it's usually a small number, typically on a number scale from either +4 down to like -4. So anything from positive number down to about -1 for a T-score is considered normal bone density. You're in the normal healthy range. T-score numbers ranging from -1 to -2.5 is the beginning of bone loss, and it's our warning signal. It's kind of that yellow light that we're starting to lose bone faster than we're making new healthy bone, and that is labeled as osteopenia. It's not a diagnosis of bone disease yet, but you're on your way. So it's a perfect time to intervene. Now, below -2.5 is considered osteoporosis, and that is an actual medical diagnosis of bone disease. And that is a lot of times when we're given that red flag, an intervention needs to happen, because in theory, if you're losing bone density, you have a higher risk of fracture. And that's really, at the end of the day, that's really all we care about.
So basically, the more negative usually equals more bone loss.
Correct. That is correct. And this is where we're going to get into kind of the conceptualize. It can be very liberally interpreted as a % bone loss, just to give some clarity and context around those numbers. So if you have a T-score, say +2, that's awesome.
So
that's like super awesome, because you, in theory, have about 20% better bone density than an average 30-year-old. It's great.
Yeah.
If you have a T-score of, say, -1, we can interpret that also as maybe a percent bone loss. So a -1 T-score could be conceptualized as like 10% bone loss, if you will. So just add a 0 onto the end of that T-score. So that could be like you've got 10% less bone than you had when you reached peak bone mass at the age of 30. So if we put that now in the realm of those labels, so -1 to -2.5 T-score, so 10% to 25% bone loss is osteopenia. You're losing bone faster than you're making it. Warning sign. So until you get to about 25% bone loss, we're in that warning. We're in that rate of we need to be intervening and have it on our radar. Then at a -2.5 or below, we conceptualize 25% bone loss or greater. Now we're into that bone disease state. So if you have a T-score of -3.2 per se, that's 32% bone loss. That's a third of your bone mass that you've lost. Those are when the numbers get scary. You have a -4 T-score. That's 40% bone loss. That's kind of how you can understand what's going on inside your body. It makes it really easy to interpret those T-scores. So Sarah, does that make sense when I put it into those kinds of like percentages and terms?
Yes, I think that really just helps clarify, like, what does that number mean?
Yeah.
When you see it, I mean, because you just see it and you're like, what is that? That really brings clarity. But what I think is really the important part is to realize that that T-score is really just giving us a fraction of the picture, right?
It's just a data point. The reason we wanted to clarify it is because most people are so confused as to what it means. But it really is just it's just data.
It's just data. It's not telling us our bone quality. It's not telling us our bone strength. It's not telling us how flexible or resilient our bone is.
Right. If you happen to fall, it's not going to tell you how well you're going to bounce back from that fall.
No.
Or how likely you are to even fracture.
Right. And we actually have had some people who have had that kind of -3.2 in their hip and fall on it and be able to get up and have no fracture.
Right.
Because we know that kind of signals that that inside quality is there.
Right. A -3.2, you might have lost 32% of your bone. However, if the bone you still have is flexible and resilient and elastic and new healthy bone tissue, it's going to still be more resilient to fracture than a -3.2 bone that is brittle and old and not regenerating. That's going to be a much higher fracture risk. So you can see how it only gives us a small picture of what's actually happening in the bone.
So this is really going back to what we talked about last week, right?
Yes.
It's really talking about how you can have good density,
But still have brittle bones.
or you could have more poor density, but have really strong, healthy, resilient bone.
Right. It only gives us one part of the story. And that's part of the reason that I think we can get ourselves into a lot of trouble if we just rely on the T-score. Because we either panic unnecessarily or we ignore something important altogether. Like we have a decent T-score, so we think we're good. And we might not be.
So could you just give us that visual again? Because you're just so good at that.
Right. Kind of an analogy of what's going on like inside the body.
Yes.
Okay. So I really like to use a building analogy or like building a wall analogy, if you will. So if you think of your bones like the structure of a building, because it literally is, it's the foundation of your body, your T-score is how much material is there. Okay. So the lumberyard backs into your driveway and drops off the pallet of bricks. That's your T-score. How many bricks are there? That's it. It tells us nothing about how that wall or that building is going to be built or how much other material is there, because you still need your mortar, you still need some nails, you still need some 2x4s in order to build a good, healthy, strong wall. If you just stack up bricks, think about that.
Right. Like it's going to fall.
Right. If you lean against that wall, it's going to fall, right? So your T-score only tells you how much material has been delivered, how much material is there, and that's it. It doesn't go beyond how well the building is structured, if the framework is solid, if it would withstand stress and weather and all of that stuff. So if you envision that, it becomes really easy to understand that it's just a data point. Right? We need more information. It doesn't tell us the whole picture.
Right. Because really also thinking about that brick wall, like when you actually see one, right, there's mortar, there's all that other stuff that helps support it.
Right.
Yeah. So we're just really judging that building based off how many bricks are there.
Right. And you can see how that can get you into trouble. It really doesn't give us the full picture.
So when we were talking about T-scores, why does that actually just feel so overwhelming to people?
I think, Sarah, it's because when you are just given a number and a diagnosis or a label, and zero context or strategy or explanation of what's truly going on, you're just left thinking like, okay, so I don't need to do anything, which is dangerous.
Right.
Or the exact opposite of that, like, am I fragile? Do I need to completely stop living my life? Am I going to break at the first little stumble over a pebble in the sidewalk? Is this just going to continue to get worse? Am I going to end up in a wheelchair? Am I going to end up being a burden to my family? Like, you can really start to go down into this entire spiral. And I don't know what's worse, either having the confidence that nothing is wrong, so you don't need to change anything,
Right.
or completely eliminating all of the joy and activity out of your life. Either option is heartbreaking.
Yeah, and we literally see this all the time.
All the time.
Especially women coming in, they have that DEXA scan done, they get that T-score, they have the call, and they're just like, do I need to stop traveling? Do I need to stop exercising? Do I have to stop living my life? What is safe for me to do?
That's exactly right, Sarah. And unfortunately, when it comes to bone health and even muscle mass, that is exactly the opposite of what you need to do, because I'm going to dive into a little bit of science, like we love to do,
Yes.
because bone is a living tissue. And if you understand that, you understand that bone has a life cycle. We're constantly regenerating new bone and clearing out old, brittle, icky bone. However, in order to trigger bone growth over the rate of loss that is typical, you have to have a load placed upon that bone. You have to have adequate nutrition. And everybody thinks about calcium, vitamin D, maybe K2.
Maybe. Yep.
Maybe. And maybe protein in regards to nutrition. But it is not just taking a calcium supplement and drinking a glass of milk a day and you're going to have strong, healthy bones. Your bones are also completely dependent on hormone optimization, controlling inflammation in the body. There's a whole host of things. And while that can seem overwhelming, it isn't, because what that means is building new, healthy bone is completely within your control. There's so many things you can do for yourself. And it's not just your T-score. Your T-score is just a single data point that tells us where you fall on the spectrum of bone loss. That's it. It doesn't lead to a fracture risk. It doesn't tell you anything about bone quality. It is literally just a single data point.
Right. So instead of asking yourself, what is wrong with me? We're going to ask ourselves,
what does my body need to build stronger bones? What does it need that I have not been giving it? If I'm getting a T-score that's less than optimal, where is the gap?
So I think this is where your expertise comes in so well, Dr. Becky, because you just have such a great way of keeping things simple and realistic and sustainable. So what do we need to be looking at and reframing that thought process?
So you get a DEXA scan, you get a T-score, you're given a label, regardless of what it is. Let's just simplify this, because we're not going to panic. We're not going to go to extremes. We're not going to go over and overwhelm. We're not going to shut down. We're not going to give up our life. It's the worst possible thing that you can do. If you have anybody that's telling you that, it's time to find different advice, okay?
Yes.
What you do need is know what your number actually means. Go back and listen to this episode to understand what that number is actually telling you. But more importantly, what it doesn't mean. A T-score does not mean fracture risk. It tells you nothing about the quality of your bone. You also need a basic understanding of bone. We already covered that a little bit.
Yep.
And what the bone tissue responds to. Okay, because bone is fully remodelable and adaptable. It just has to be given the right environment and the right triggers in order to make that happen. And then you just need to take simple, consistent action. It's what we do every day at our wellness center. Our members don't just come in and do the osteogenic loading. We have conversations with them about their lifestyle, about their nutrition, about controlling inflammation. We have other modalities there that keep them healthy and active and confident. We're building balance. We're improving their stability. Those all play a role into fracture prevention.
So what is the one thing listeners should be doing today after this episode?
Go find your T-score. Number one, if you've had a DEXA scan, go find your T-score. Ask yourself, where does it fall? Where am I at in the range? Has it changed over time? If you've had multiple DEXA scans, we start to compare your T-scores so that we know, are you in active bone loss? Are you in maintenance? Are you doing some interventions and you're starting to rebuild your bone back? That's fantastic. And then you have to give yourself an honest analysis of what are you currently doing to support your bones. Walking isn't enough.
No, it's not.
Doing yoga isn't enough. Swimming, bicycling, not enough. They're wonderful. Don't get me wrong, those exercises all have their place. It's all going to help with cardiovascular health, great for heart health, great for brain health, but it is not enough for bone health. Resistance exercises, the heavier the loads, the better. Bones respond to the environment in which they're placed, and they need load in order to trigger bone growth and adapt to that environment. So know what your bones need. If you're at the wellness center,
yep, you're doing this.
You're fully aware of what it takes to build strong, healthy bones.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing I don't want you to do is approach any of this from a state of fear, but approach it from a state of awareness and empowerment, because there's so many things that you can do to improve your bone health.
And if you have been listening to us today and you're like, I am really starting to understand that bone health, especially, and that T-score isn't just about the density, it's really about fracture prevention.
100%.
And this is something we talk about on the daily at our wellness center. Mm-hmm. But also, if you want to take it a step further.
Yeah, that's exactly why we actually created our Age Strong Energy Experience. It's a workshop where we cover the 4 components of aging strong and becoming fracture proof. And that is overall strength, vitality, and recovery. We walk you through what it actually takes to build bone, along with overall strength and stability, how to support your body in particular, because every single body is different, mm-hmm. and then how to support it without overwhelm. And I think that's the key.
That's the huge key.
Yep. Yes. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, aging strong, being resilient, and fracture proofing is not about doing everything. It's about doing what matters. And that's really what we walk you through in the Age Strong Energy Experience workshop. So there's a link below in the show notes for you to check that out if that is something that you're interested in. Super excited about it.
Yeah, and really it's really about saying yes to life.
Yes.
It's about staying strong. It's about keeping that energy up. It's really just about enjoying all the beautiful things there are to enjoy.
So you can keep participating.
Yeah.
That's, at the end of the day, that's
all that really matters.
It's all that matters.
Yeah.
It's what's important. So hopefully this episode was super helpful. If you made it all the way to the end here, make sure and subscribe and comment with...
Well, probably the bone emoji, don't you think?
I think the bone emoji, or a big T.
Or a big T.
Capital T. Either one.
You pick. Yeah.
So until next time.
Yeah. Say yes to chocolate. Thanks for hanging out with us on Say Yes to Chocolate.
If today's episode gave you a win, something to think about, or even just a smile, we'd love it if you'd subscribe, rate, and share it with a friend.
Want more? Join our email newsletter so you don't miss a beat, and come find us on all the social channels at Say Yes to Chocolate Podcast for all the quick hints and tips.
And don't forget, you can always send us your questions or episode ideas. We love hearing from you.
Until next time, keep it simple, stay curious, and always say yes to chocolate.